A housekeeper took the witness stand, swore to tell the truth, and repeated 8 words a billionaire would spend the rest of her life denying. "We don't pay taxes. Only the little people pay taxes." Leona Helmsley swore she never said it. The jury believed the maid. And in one short sentence, an entire country found what it had been hunting for: a face for every wealthy person who ever acted like the rules were written for somebody else. This is what the court record actually shows. By the late 1980s, the Helmsley name sat on some of the most valuable real estate in America. Harry Helmsley had built it, a quiet, self-made man who assembled a fortune measured in billions, with a stake in the Empire State Building and a chain of luxury hotels. Leona married into that world and took command of the hotels. Her own face ran in the advertisements. The Queen standing guard over her palace, promising that nothing less than perfection would be tolerated. And she had not been born to it. Leona Roberts came from modest beginnings, clawed her way up through the brutal, male world of New York real estate, and remade herself into royalty. That climb matters. The people who most need everyone to know they've arrived are often the ones who remember, in their bones, what it felt like to be nobody. She had been one of the little people once. She may have spent the rest of her life making sure no one could ever confuse her for one again. Behind the ads, the perfection had a temper. Former employees described a woman who fired people on sight, who screamed over a wrinkle in a bedspread or a smudge on a glass. The press would later crown her the Queen of Mean. But cruelty is not a crime. What put Leona Helmsley in a federal courtroom was something smaller, and far more ordinary: a pile of invoices. The irony sat in plain sight. Her whole public image was built on demanding that everything be paid for properly: no corner cut, no detail missed, no guest shortchanged. She sold perfection and accountability to the world. She just didn't believe either one applied to her own tax return. The Helmsleys owned a 28-room mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, called Dunellen Hall. They poured millions into it. Renovations on that scale generate paper. Every marble slab, every fixture, every craftsman came with a bill. And according to the government's case, those bills were quietly rewritten. Personal luxuries for a private home were relabeled as business expenses for the hotels, and deducted from the taxes the Helmsleys owed. The list read like a fever dream of excess. A silver clock. A jade art collection. A mahogany card table. An indoor-outdoor barbecue pit. A marble dance floor built out over a swimming pool so she could entertain above the water. Item after item, the government showed how a private indulgence had been dressed up as a business cost, and passed, invisibly, onto every taxpayer who did play by the rules. Here is the human detail the record keeps returning to. This was a woman worth billions. The money at stake, around $1 million in evaded taxes, was, to her, almost nothing. And that is exactly the point. She didn't cheat because she was desperate. She cheated because, somewhere along the way, she had decided the bill simply did not apply to her. It might have stayed buried, except for one thing that people with power forget again and again. Somebody always gets stiffed. Contractors who worked on the mansion said they weren't paid what they were owed. Angry, holding boxes of documents, they took their paperwork to the newspapers. The invoices told their own story: the same items billed one way to the family, another way to the company. What started as a business dispute became a public scandal, and then a federal investigation, led out of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan. In 1988, Leona and Harry Helmsley were indicted. Harry, elderly and in failing health, was ruled unfit to stand trial. So Leona would face it alone. There is a pattern here worth naming. The powerful rarely fall because an enemy takes them down. They fall because they mistreat the small people underneath them, the maid, the contractor, the clerk, the very people they believe are beneath noticing. Contempt has a long memory. She had spent years making people feel like nothing. When the moment came, those same people had the receipts. The trial opened in 1989. And the government's case was not really about tax law. It was about character. Witness after witness, employees, former staff, people who had worked in her homes, described the woman behind the advertising. The screaming. The firings. The demands. By the time the trial began, Leona Helmsley was already a tabloid villain. Magazines put her on their covers. The public had convicted her long before the jury did, and there is something uncomfortable in how much everyone enjoyed it. A rich woman brought low is one of the oldest, most satisfying stories there is. We tell ourselves it's about justice. Often it's just about the pleasure of watching someone fall. Then came the housekeeper, Elizabeth Baum. She testified that she had once heard Leona Helmsley say it plainly. That the little people pay taxes. That she and her husband did not. On the stand, the housekeeper held to her account. The defense pressed her, suggested motive, reminded the jury she was a former worker with reasons to wound the woman who employed her. It was a fair line of attack. Witnesses carry grudges. Memory bends. But the jury weighed her word against everything else it had seen, the invoices, the parade of staff, the pattern, and it decided she was telling the truth. Leona's defense argued the case was a witch hunt, that the government was prosecuting a personality, not a crime, that they wanted to punish a rich, unlikable woman for being rich and unlikable. And there was truth buried in that complaint. She was being judged for who she was, not only for what she did. But juries are human. And once they heard that line, everything else clicked into place. The invoices weren't just accounting errors anymore. They were proof of exactly the attitude the housekeeper described, a person who genuinely believed that taxes, like bad manners, were a thing that happened to other people. That is how a courtroom really works on a jury. The facts fill the ledger, but a single sentence tells them what the facts mean. In August of 1989, the jury returned. Guilty. 33 counts: conspiracy, tax evasion, filing false returns, mail fraud. She was acquitted of some charges, but the core of the case held. The Queen of the Palace was now a convicted felon. She appealed. The convictions were largely upheld. Harry Helmsley never stood trial at all. He died a few years later, his mind gone, spared the courtroom his wife had to face alone. The empire they built together went on without either of them. The sentence came down to 4 years in prison, along with community service and more than $7 million in fines and back taxes. And there was a detail almost too perfect to be real. The date she reported to begin her sentence was April 15, tax day. The one day of the year every ordinary American settles up with the government, the little people, doing exactly what she was accused of refusing to do. Even the punishment became a scandal of its own. Ordered to perform community service, she was later accused of making her employees do it for her. One more instance, her critics said, of a woman who believed effort, like taxes, was something the little people handled. She served 18 months and was released. Now here is the part the punchline forgets. Leona Helmsley never lost her fortune. She walked out of prison still one of the richest women in the country. The tax bill, the fines, the humiliation, none of it touched the mountain of money underneath. Prison was, for her, a detour, not a fall. When Leona Helmsley died in 2007, her will made headlines one last time. She left $12 million in trust, not to her grandchildren, two of whom she cut out entirely, but to her dog, a little Maltese named Trouble. A court would later trim the dog's inheritance, and hand some of the money back to the family she had tried to erase. The phrase outlived her completely. It slipped into the language, a shorthand people still reach for whenever a powerful figure is caught skipping the rules the rest of us follow. Most who quote it have no idea she denied ever saying it. That is the strange afterlife of a courtroom line. It stops being testimony and becomes folklore, truer to what people already believe than to what was ever proven. Think about what that will says about the woman. To the very end, money was never really about comfort or security. She had more of both than she could use. It was about control. About deciding who deserved and who didn't. Who was worthy, and who was one of the little people. Even in death, she was still standing guard over the palace, still drawing the line, still deciding that a dog deserved more loyalty than her own blood. We remember the quote and we laugh, because it lets us feel like we would never be her. But the case underneath the quote asks a harder question. She didn't cheat because she needed the money. She cheated because she had stopped believing the rules were real for someone like her. And that belief doesn't require $1 billion. It only requires the quiet certainty that you are the exception, and that the bill, whatever it is, belongs to someone smaller. So here is what the record leaves you to sit with. Was Leona Helmsley punished for what she did, or for finally saying out loud what a lot of powerful people quietly believe? Follow for more.